I ultimately made the man who harassed my wife pay a stunning price. One that would cost him half of his entire life's earnings. It all started with a seemingly insignificant event. But my response was a masterclass in revenge. 3 full years in the making. This was back in 2013. I'm a British Marine. And at the time I was based in Holland. I had been married to my wife, Chloe, for just over 18 months when I was deployed to Afghanistan. Chloe worked in the British delegation on the base back in Holland. So she knew almost every Brit and their spouse. Out on tour. Life is already tense. One day, that tension became terrifyingly real when our unit was directly targeted by a vehicle-borne IED. It's one thing to face a general threat. But being personally targeted by someone, in this case a man we'll call Terry, felt intensely personal. As if my day wasn't bad enough. I then found out that an RAF guy back in Holland, a man named Scott, had been trying to get with my wife. Still reeling from Terry trying to blow me to pieces. I found Scott on Facebook and sent him a message that was straight to the point. If you go near my wife Chloe again, I will put glass in your throat the next time I see you. The next day, my boss, a flight lieutenant in the RAF, messaged me. Scott had run straight to him and told. My boss gave me a friendly heads up, warning me that Scott could have gone to the military police and reported me for the threat. I have no idea what the official fallout would have been. But I acknowledged the warning and promised it wouldn't happen again. Thankfully, my boss had my back and essentially told Scott to wind his neck in. Fast forward. I returned home from Afghanistan and began settling back into a normal life. A few days later, Chloe brought something up. She explained she hadn't mentioned it while I was deployed because of how I'd reacted to the first incident. An Army Sergeant Major had been messaging her on Facebook, telling her she was beautiful and asking for her number. She had blocked him immediately. I was furious. But I understood why she waited until I was back on home soil to tell me. The next day, I went to my other boss, an Army captain named Miller. I told him what happened. And he simply said, "Leave it with me." He apparently had a chat with the sergeant major. But absolutely nothing came of it. I was deflated and even more enraged. That was until our senior military officer, Colonel Armstrong, came into our department. He welcomed me back and asked how my tour was. Still seething, I replied, "It was good, sir. With the exception of Sergeant Major Davies trying to get with my wife." The colonel was, justifiably, taken aback. About an hour later, he emailed me saying he felt the need to take official action. What I had forgotten was that the colonel and Sergeant Major Davies belonged to the same regiment. So having one of his own men behave this way had clearly struck a nerve. I gave him the full story, complete with the screenshots of what Davies had sent to my wife. For the process to go official, however, Chloe would have to provide a formal statement. Unfortunately, she is very non-confrontational and didn't want the situation to escalate. I respected her wishes. But I immediately hatched a new plan. As one commenter later noted, revenge is a dish best served cold. My patience was about to be put to the test. Sergeant Major Davies made a foolish decision at that moment. Completely unaware that a single act of forced contrition would become the very instrument of his own downfall. I emailed Colonel Armstrong and explained that Chloe had declined to give a statement. However, I told him I felt some formal recognition was necessary. I requested that Sergeant Major Davies be required to write a formal letter of apology. addressed to both me and my wife, which had to be signed and dated. The request was granted. 2 days later, the letter arrived. It read, Lance Corporal and Mrs. Liam. I am writing this letter to you both to apologize for the torment and anxiety that you both must have felt from the messages that you received from my Facebook account. To Mrs. Liam. Nobody should ever be in a situation where they worry about going to work because of who may come through the door. Especially so when they have the added stress of a partner being operationally deployed at the time. The anguish that you must have felt at this time is immeasurable, and for this, I apologize. To Lance Corporal Liam. Being operationally deployed is stressful enough without the added stress and worry about family back home. Support from home and loved ones is what carries many people through tough times whilst on tour. For any undue angst caused, I apologize. I regret any hurt and anguish caused by this issue and apologize wholeheartedly and unreservedly to you both. Signed, SGT Maj Davies. Position held. With the letter in my possession, I now waited. I served out the rest of my time in Holland, moved back to a new base in the UK, and waited some more. Almost 3 years to the day after I received that letter, I looked up Sergeant Major Davies' wife on Facebook. I knew the entire time we were in Holland that he was married. His wife lived back in the UK while he routinely tried to cheat on her. The time for my revenge was chosen with surgical precision. I remembered him mentioning he only had 3 years left to serve. If my timing was right, he was just months away from completing his 22 years of service and receiving a very handsome pension. This was the moment the trap, so carefully laid and patiently watched, finally sprang shut. As another person wisely commented, you see, it's the slow knife. The knife that takes its time. The knife that waits years without forgetting, then slips quietly between bones. That's the knife that cuts the deepest. I sent his wife the screenshot of the messages her husband had sent to Chloe. Then, I sent her pictures of the emails between myself and Colonel Armstrong where I requested the apology letter, with the Colonel's details blanked out, of course. And for the final, devastating blow, I sent her a picture of the apology letter itself, signed and dated by her own husband, admitting to everything. I watched and waited until I saw the read receipt appear under the messages. Once I saw she had opened it, I blocked her, blocked Sergeant Major Davies, and blocked all of his friends who had been in Holland with us. My part was done. If his wife decided to go ahead with the divorce, she would be entitled to half of his pension, a move that would financially cripple him for the rest of his life. This story is a clear example that the most effective revenge isn't always loud and immediate, but often quiet, calculated, and perfectly timed. So, what do you think? Was this 3-year-long game of revenge a justified act of a protective husband? Or did it go too far? Let me know your thoughts below.